All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So here we go. The UI4, as it's being called, is a big change to navigation, and there's enhancements to feature functionality. So the biggest change in this is a visual change, which turns the navigation from top down to left and right. Okay, well, actually just left, I guess I should say. Okay, the color scheme changes quite a bit. And as you work with the menuing options, as you click on a module, a secondary menu shows up. I click on that secondary menu. If there's a third level menu, you will get prompted with that. So menus will appear as you select items. So you're selecting the navigation path along the way. And you always have to end up selecting the lowest branch. So let me demonstrate that in the system if you guys haven't had the opportunity to try to play with this yet. Okay, so here's the old UI or the current UI. This is affectionately known as UI3, and UI4 looks like this. Okay, now if you look on the left-hand side, you can see the same kind of module names. But if I go to something like projects, the tabs that you typically would click on the module and then you see the tabs going down, all of the tabs are actually sub-menu items underneath the navigation bar. Okay, so now you're having to scroll up and down to get to that tab, and you can go into that tab and then pick the particular sub-tab that you want. So when I say go to the lowest branch, you actually have to navigate all the way through to the lowest branch to get where you need to go. For those of you who are administrators, you might be going into the administrator menu quite a bit. So if you click on this dot, dot, dot at the bottom, there's a reports, workspaces, and administration. Those are the modules that are sort of the ad hoc things, the general ones that everyone gets if you have workspaces turned on. And then the other modules are at the top here. So there's a little bit of a segregation of what the modules were, and then those sort of standard modules that were always at the end. These things over here, report, workspaces, and administration. Those are at the bottom. Okay, and when you click on administration, you get your global settings and your application settings, and then these are the other tabs that you see when you go into administration, right? So these are the 4 tabs, and you can see in the navigation that the tabs are actually sort of this higher outline. But if I wanted to go inside the application settings, I don't have to go to application settings and then select a menu. I just select it from here. So I can select project settings and it'll jump me into project settings. Okay. Now, as I'm navigating through this, you're going to see throughout this presentation that there's actually a multi-step rollout that's happening with this UI change. So this UI change was first introduced just about a year ago in the April timeframe. That was the first iteration, phase 1. In October, we were presented with phase 2, and I was fortunate enough to get some information from the product development at NetSuite, and he has let me know that phase 3 was just released in sandboxes that you can enable. So you actually enable each phase as you go along. And phase 4 is currently being worked on, and they're looking to release that as well. And they're only releasing it in sandbox environments. And of course, I think they're also releasing it in production, but many people haven't switched the UI. So them releasing it isn't impacting anything. If you do see something, of course, certainly submit tickets to NetSuite support. So this is as far as I know. Us being TopStep, we don't have any kind of special intelligence about what the roadmap is. I know the goal is for them to finish the UI changes by the end of 2019. So in order to meet that deadline, I just found out that they are doing some interim releases outside of the normal big release cycles. So when the April release comes, you're going to hear all about the items that have been released in pieces, phase 3, phase 4. I'm assuming there's 5 through whatever. So that's just my assumption. So these phases are basically introducing the changes, and then the change is being applied to certain modules and tabs. So it's not a big bang like those of us who went through the UI3 change. It's more of a gradual change, but when the rollout is being done across across your account, you'll probably want to wait until all the pieces are done and implement them all at the same time. Okay. Now, how does UI4 impact you? Okay, so this is already some of the questions, and I know that's what the big interest is on this webinar, right? So currently UI4, as it's being called, is only by request. So you do not have to turn it on at this point. When the expectation, and this was a response that I got when the question was asked to one of the NetSuite release webinars. This is expected to be the new UI starting in 2020. Now, those of you who are new to OpenAir, us old folks have been through this before, and in 2013, the UI3, the UI that you're probably using right now, was the first time in my 15 years of experience in working with OpenAir, it's the first time that I saw a feature be enforced across the baseline. So everyone had to adopt UI3. It took about a year and a half, don't quote me on that, but it took about a year and a half to slowly phase it through all of the customers until it was done. So it is not a sudden big bang that you have to go to it. At least that's my assumption because of how it was managed for the UI3 rollout. And I thought that was managed very well. So I'm expecting the same kind of management. So with me saying that the new UI, this will be the new UI in 2020, my expectation is that the release of the enforcement of adopting the UI in 2020 will start in 2020, and it may continue on until 2021. Again, I am not an authority figure. I'm just going based on experience and having gone through this before as a supporter of the OpenAir system and a product user myself. Okay, so again, this is not official words from NetSuite other than the fact that it's going to be the official new UI. Now, some of you may be joining this saying, okay, what's the new UI? But you actually already have this side navigation menu. When this was first enabled, this new UI came out in April, even phase 1. Some customers that are on the platform that just adopted the system as early as last summer, they were actually encouraged to go on to the new UI. So they are actually, a lot of people are on phase 1 UI, but I will tell you, in working with various people as existing customers, not a lot of existing customers have switched over to it yet. It is very, very different. It takes some time. And that's why I'm really wanting to get the word out as early as possible so people can play with it. So the next few slides are going to go into more detail. And like I said, you are more than welcome to have these slides. They compare current to UI4, UI3 to UI4, and where we have found that there's differences or things that you have to do differently or no longer can do. Okay, so it's actually this long list of changes. So let's just jump right in and get as far as we can. Okay. So when you're looking at a list view of data, so this is the project list view of data. This is how the UI3 looks, and what they've done in the UI4 is they've changed the list view to be more of a grid. So everything's in a grid format. You don't have an option, it comes in a grid format, okay? But you can still lock your columns, the column lock is still there, you can still resize the columns, you can still do sorting, but there's new sort controls, I'll go through that. You can still customize your list view the same way you've been doing it before, adding and subtracting columns. But what a lot of the changes are basically moving the controls to I call it a consolidated console feature. I don't know what the official name is, I just give it weird names, but this control console will be in the upper right hand corner, and it contains everything, and it's more of an icon type option versus menus that you've seen in the past. Okay, now let's go through each of the pieces of that control icon or control console thing. So in the current UI, UI3, you have that gear icon, and that's also gone through an evolution over time. But if you click on the gear, you get the options to customize your view and download data, and there's rows per page and the density and all that kind of stuff. What's happened now is the gear icon has been replaced So it's basically broken some of these pieces out into their own features. So the customize list view has moved to its own icon. So instead of a link, it's two options, and these actual options are available right now in your UI. Okay, I want to make sure you guys can hear me, so I'm going to check the chat really quick. Okay, good. Okay, I'll check it again to look for questions. So the customized view has broken out into the column list and the manage list views options, which actually are the same thing as over here, the untitled and columns thing in the current UI. So they've broken those out. The download list data has moved to its own icon. So now we get the little download that's consistent with the report management interface, the report interfaces. The rows per page are still the same, but you'll notice that you don't get an all option, you get like 1,000. And that's really to help with performance, because a lot of people, when they first adopt OpenAir, if they've migrated hundreds of thousands of records and then they go to open up that list view, it really drags down the performance of the system. So this is a sort of a little control to be able to, seeing a list of 1,000 records, that's still a pretty long list. So, so definitely see how that works for you. Now, the other two items that are on the gear icon, this density control, you may or may not be using that. That's to be able to control the white space in each row. There's comfortable and compact. That goes away. The resize columns feature, it's standardly disabled and then you can enable it. That goes away because all columns are automatically allowed to be resized. So you don't have to turn that on and off anymore. It's a part of the list view. Okay. And there's actually a new column called the column totals, and that anything that has a number in it, hours, money, if you turn that on, it will give you your total at the bottom. And of course, as far as money is concerned, that would all have to be the same currency. So if you're using multi-currency, you would not see a total at the bottom for that. Okay, so that's those are the big things that happen on the gear. So you can see already things sort of just moved around quite a bit, and it's probably more logical for those of you who are new to the system. For us old folks, we just have to retrain our brain the whole time, and you're going to hear that mentioned by me multiple times in this presentation. As far as managing the list views feature, currently in the UI 3, there's a managing list views and columns. They released that standard in every account right now. So if you're not sure where I'm talking about, it's in here. Okay, it's this list view control where you can actually save a list view and publish it so people can use it if they want. And then this is your column list. Okay, so that feature was released and made standard last year, and it actually is part of the new UI. In the new UI, though, it just has two different icons. So it still has the list view. This in flight is one of the list views I have in our sandbox. And then it has that little column icon, which handles the column view. Okay. So you can customize your list view using either of these options. The customize list view link in the gear icon is gone because they want you to use these two features because they basically do the same thing. Actually, they do the same thing. Okay. Now, a big change that's happened here, and this sort of introduces another thing that they're introducing to help things out, is the bulk action or the run in action feature. So in the current UI, if you use the checkboxes, which you can move that checkbox column anywhere you want, and you click on the play button, a menu pops up depending on where you are in the application. Okay, so if I do this and click the menu, it says, okay, for the 16 things you've selected, what do you want to do? Okay, and that menu changes, as you know, if you move through the different modules. Okay, in the new UI, the column to select items is locked. It will always be the first column. You can't move it. And the bulk actions menu is over on the right-hand side. Okay, so it's over in the control console. So it does seem like it's very far apart, If you do select things, it'll show you the number that's selected actually in the UI before the menu appears, okay? If you click on bulk actions, you'll get the menu. However, they have started introducing these shortcut keys. So instead of getting carpal tunnel by moving your cursor left and right to try and click on bulk action, you can use a checkbox and hit the letter B, and the menu will appear to do the same actions. Okay, so if I show you that in the system, of course, I can always make it look really pretty in a slide deck, but I'm going to show you real time. So if I go to projects, so here's how I would normally, when I first started playing with this, I was selecting these. I see the 10 over here, and then I would have to click on the bulk action to get the menu. But that's a lot of scrolling. So if I just select the options and hit the letter B, it comes up. Okay, so there's a number of shortcut keys that are now tied to these new icons over here on the right. So you're going to hear me mention shortcut keys as we go forward. Okay. Now, another enhancement is the sorting option. Now, this enhancement I really do like. The sorting option in the current UI is click on the header of a column and you can sort ascending or descending, and that's it. One column, and some of the columns don't support it. So that you get the little up arrow or down arrow, as you guys know, if you click on the name of the column in OpenAir. Okay, so if I do this, if I click on project, it changes the sort. Okay, but if I click on a different column, that's the column that's sorted now. The first one goes away. Okay. What I think is a very good enhancement with the UI4 is the ability to, you get a new sort icon over here. When you click on the sort icon, it comes up and it says, what field do you want to sort by? And you can select up to 3 columns. And those columns can be independently ascending or descending, and they're in order. So primary, secondary, tertiary, very similar to what you probably do when you download the data and do it in Excel. Okay, because you want to sort it different ways, right? So you can actually select up to 3 fields. The sort ascending or descending is an option that you can set, and then that will display in the window for the column. Okay. Again, once you click the order by, depending on where your cursor is, you may not want to scroll all the way to the right to get to the console. So there's a shortcut key called O, which if you click the O, it gives you the option for order by. So it's not S for sort, it's O for order by, and the window will pop up. Once you have set up your sort options, you have the ability in each of the columns that displays the sort to change it in the column itself. So if I go into the new UI, okay. And you see here under my sort, if I just type the letter O, I'm going to move my cursor way over here and type the letter O, it comes up, and these are what I have right now. I can change the active filter. Let's see, I don't know which one's primary. Primary is client. Okay. So I can change client, instead of it being through A through Z, I can change it here and just switch the sort to be Z through A. So you can see how it did the flip dynamically there. And so these other 2 stayed the same because those are ascending to descending. Okay. So I really like that. I'm sure many of you, as you're trying this out in your own sandboxes, you have found bugs. I hope you're reporting them, because as each phase comes out, get in there and test it out so they can correct it as we go. So phase 2 has had a number of items fixed since it came out in October. I know that. So now let's talk about the filter options. So filtering, there's that advanced or page filtering. I used to call it page filtering. It's called advanced filtering according to the OpenAir system. And that's that little drop-down menu in the upper left-hand corner of every page, or most pages, where you can set up filters with like contains or is part of or is not of. And then of course the column filters are available. So if I go into our system, I can pick like a column filter here. Or sorry, this is a page filter here. I can pick a column filter here. And then that gives me the ability to filter everything down the way I want with 2 different options. Okay. This actually has been dramatically changed. in UI4. Okay. In UI4, the filtering has been moved to a single consolidated icon that you can launch with the letter F as a short key. So far we have B for bulk, O for order by, F for filter. And when you click on F, it basically opens up just a little drop-down menu that says all. So it's it's not very exciting when you hit the letter F because very little shows up, but the menu is very similar to what you've set up with your advanced page filters. So when you turn on UI4, you will not lose anything that you've set up as far as your filters. However, you will lose your column filters because column filters are now something that you have to do in the consolidated filter icon, okay, which is a big change for me. And where there used to be a little clear tips thing, clear column filters, clear all list filters, that's gone now because all you have to do is reset the consolidated filter to all and it clears it out. So that's a little tricky in the new world, and that's part of the brain retraining that I keep having to do because that's not native for me. If I click F to bring this up, I still have all my views that I have in here, and now I have to add more controls or configurations to these list views versus using some column views very quickly, column filters very quickly. Okay, so I don't know if that's final configuration, but that's the way it is right now. So I know some of you are probably, making your own decisions just on this slide alone. Another thing that they've done, and they're slowly building this out for all the workflow pages, is the waiting my approval. So anything that has an approval process, like timesheets or expenses or bookings or booking requests and all that kind of stuff, there was always that submitted tab, and underneath the submitted tab was waiting my approval and all. And those of you who first adopted the system, that was always a very confusing, make sure that you're clicking on waiting my approval, because if you click on all, those are all submitted, not the ones you're responsible for type training, okay? So those now have been brought up to the same level, and now they're in 2 separate tabs. So submitted will just be submitted, and now there's gonna be a to approve tab for everything, okay? Those of you who have tried out the new UI features since October or during October, for example, in your preview environment, just to let you know, the phases, those interim phases that are going out, those are actually just applying the changes to different areas of the system. So in October, this to approve tab came out in the booking area. Now it's available in the timesheet area, the schedule request area, and I think it's expenses now. And then phase 4 is going to continue to add it to the other places like invoices and so forth. Okay, so each phase is not necessarily entering new enhancements, it's just expanding what parts of the system are adopting the new UI. Okay. Let's not forget the user center. So the user center has a couple of changes. In the upper right hand corner on the current UI, you have your name and your role, and then there's a little icon that, a down arrow that you click on and you get your menu. Okay. That's in the same location in the new UI. However, some of you may remember the October feature where there was a lot of focus on, hey, you can load your own photograph in the UI. In UI4, if you load a photo, it appears in the little tiny circle in the upper right hand corner. Okay. If you do not load a photo, it shows your initials, only your initials in a circle. So if I didn't have that photo, it would say JC in the circle in the corner. But if you click on the names in either one, you get the menu, and really the text size is the only real difference that's happened so far, because instead of visually seeing it, it gives you numbers to select for the text size. And then finally, all the rest of the items that are on the menu are the same thing. So, my profile, personal settings, those are all the same options on both menus so far. So not drastically different there. Okay. But you'll notice that there are 2 other things sitting over there by my picture, and that is actually where the tips and the compare view moved. Because they were on the left-hand side, now we know the navigation is there. So where do those things go? They go up in the upper right-hand corner. So basically all of the navigation is on the left, and those sort of data interaction things are on the right. And the tips area turns into a little idea icon. If you need to do like modify form permissions and stuff, that shows up there. And then the compare view also shows up right next to it. Now, the global create button also has been left on the left-hand side, but it's actually just built into the navigation now. So it's actually the top thing, and it has the word create. So it's a little more obvious that that's a create action going on. And for those of you, unfortunately, who have taken advantage of this vertical expand feature, that has gone away so far. So we'll see if they introduce anything else like that in the future. And finally, a tip that I'm going to pass on to you, because I have been working with the system so long, you get habits, you build habits in the system. And one of my big habits in OpenAir is, hey, I need to check a timesheet for this project. So I hover over the module, I do a right click, and I say open in a new window, and I get the timesheet thing. So now I can just move them side by side, and I do this constantly, right? It took me a while to figure it out in the new UI. To do the same thing in the new UI, what you have to do is you have to navigate to the lowest level branch before you do that right click action. If you do not navigate to the lowest level branch, let me show you what happens. So if I just go to resources and I say open in a new window, guess where I am? I'm back in the projects module. So it actually just opens up another window, but it doesn't take you anywhere. It takes you in the same place. So you can actually do that shortcut. Again, for those of us old fogies, we just have to retrain our brain to select it all the way down before you can open it up in a window and have the navigation already be done. Okay. So really, we're wrapping it up here so I can open it up for questions and review some of the questions that have come in through the chat windows and stuff. The main change in UI4 is navigation and introducing sort of a consolidated data interaction section on each page that then also can be launched quicker with using shortcut keys. Okay, so those of you who are Excel wizards, I'm sure you're in Microsoft, Word and all that kind of stuff, you'll probably catch on to this stuff very quickly. In working with new customers that have been using this new UI, they actually have found it very intuitive because it's telling them where to navigate as you go. Terminology hasn't changed at all, but I have gotten feedback that it's a bit more intuitive than the current UI3 UI. Okay. There's more control on reviewing the data, especially those 3 sort options. So now you don't always have to just dump the data into Excel and use it outside the system. You can do more in OpenAir. And probably the biggest thing, and that's why I would encourage whenever you get an opportunity to try something out in like a sandbox environment or a preview environment when the releases come out, I definitely would encourage you as administrators or having some of your key users play around with this to get a feel for it, because it is just it's change. Change is always hard, and it's a retraining activity more than anything to be able to take advantage of the functionality.